Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce to you James Adamson. A veteran of two space operations, Adamson has launched more than 334 hours in space. He first launched in 1989 on Columbia on a Department of Defense mission, followed 3 years later by a 9-day mission on Atlantis, deploying a tracking and data relay satellite. And after leaving NASA, he served as president and CEO of Allied Signal Technical Services Corporation, which later became Honeywell Technology Solutions Incorporated. He retired in 2001, and in 2003 was appointed to the Stafford County Return to Flight Task Force. James Adamson. In that role, he is the company's space exploration leader. In the early 1990s, he served as director of NASA's Kennedy Space Center. He then served as president of Firefall Aerospace Group in Utah, and just last week, he was awarded the Congressional Space Medal of Honor. Walt Cunningham, accompanied by his wife, Dawn, selected by NASA for the first manned mission of the Apollo program, Apollo 7. He later served as chief of the Skylab branch of the Flight Crew Directorate, overseeing components of the United States' first space station. Today, he shares his thoughts about the future of spaceflight through periodic columns and his book, The All-American Boys. Walt Cunningham. Charlie Duke. Duke became the 10th person to walk on the moon before Apollo 16. During 3 outside searches over 3 days, Duke, with fellow astronaut Ron Hill, drove a lunar rover 16 miles, collecting 213 pounds of lunar rock and soil. Today, he's the president of Charlie Duke Enterprises Incorporated and is an active speaker. Charlie Duke. Gordon Fullerton with his wife Marie. Selected for the Air Force Jan-Dorothy Laboratory before transferring to NASA, Fullerton flew 2 shuttle flights in space, and before then, 5 captain and 3 approach and landing tests with the Shuttle Enterprise. In 1986, Fullerton joined NASA's Research Pilot Office at Dryden Today, Kerwin is a retired senior VP with Wiley Laboratories and is a director emeritus of the National Space Biomedical Research Institute. Joseph Kerwin. Jack Lausma. Lausma worked for 59 years in orbit as the Space Station in 1973 and in 1982 commanded the third orbital test flight of the Space Shuttle Columbia. During his latter 8 days in orbit, he and 2005 inductee Gordon Fullerton exposed the shuttle to extremes of thermal stress, tested the craft's 50-foot robot arm, and conducted science experiments. Lausma retired from NASA and the Marine Corps as a colonel, currently lives in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Jack Lausma. Thomas Mattingly. Mattingly orbited the moon as command module pilot of Apollo 16 in 1972 and commanded 2 shuttle missions to fly an orbital test flight as first classified national security mission. He has walked 504 hours in space, including 1 hour and 13 minutes spacewalking during his flight back to Earth from the moon. Today, he serves as chairman of the board of Universal Space Network and director of Space Enterprise and Systems Planning and Analysis Incorporated. Ken Mattingly. Edgar Mitchell, accompanied by his son Adam. Mitchell was the first He and the late Alan Shepard explored the moon's hilly Front region in 1971. Following the Apollo program, he retired from NASA and founded the Institute of Noetic Sciences, now an international organization representing 30 countries, in effort to integrate scientific disciplines into the study of human consciousness. Ed Mitchell. Thomas Stafford with his wife Linda. General Stafford flew on Gemini 6, the first space rendezvous mission, and Gemini 9, orbited the moon on Apollo 10, and commanded the American half of the first international space mission, the Apollo-Soyuz test project. He recently co-chaired NASA's Space Shuttle Return to Flight Task Group that followed the loss of Columbia in 2003. Ladies and gentlemen, Thomas Stafford. Astronaut Scholarship Foundation Chairman Al Gordon with his wife Jill. On the 1971 which he orbited the moon. During his lonesome period orbiting the moon, Gordon remotely photographed the lunar surface with 2 special cameras mounted outside the ship. On the homeward journey, Gordon took the farthest out spacewalk, moving along handrails on the outside of the tent to retrieve film cassettes from the 2 moon-mapping cameras. Al Gordon. John Young, accompanied by his wife Susie. John Young flew on Gemini 3 and 10, orbited the moon on Apollo 10, walked on the moon on Apollo 16, and commanded 2 space shuttle missions, STS-1 and STS-9. In preparation for prime and wrap-up crew positions on 11 space flights, Young has put more than 50,000 hours in training. After 42 years, and as the longest-serving 8th Mercury astronaut himself, longtime friend of the astronauts, Bill Dana. Freedom 7, you're on your way, Jose. Bill went on to write and star several hit television shows over the years. Here along the Space Coast, we will always know him best for his character, Jose. Bill, Jose, and the reason we are all here tonight, soon to be inducted into the Astronaut Hall of Fame, the class of 2006, Charlie Bolden, accompanied by his wife, Jackie, selected as an astronaut in 1988, Bolden's first spaceflight for Columbia was the last flight before the Challenger accident in January 1986. 4 years later, he again flew as pilot, this time aboard Discovery on the 5-day STS-31 mission to deploy the Hubble Space Telescope. Bolden would fly twice forward to space, logging a career total of more than 680 hours in orbit, including commanding STS-45, the first spacelab flight dedicated to NASA's mission to planet Earth, and STS-60, the first joint United States and Russia space shuttle mission. Today, he's CEO of Jack Panther LLC, an aerospace, military, and leadership consulting firm. Ladies and gentlemen, Charlie Bolden. And Hartsfield with his wife, Fran. U.S. Air Force Manned Orbiting Laboratory Program. He piloted the fourth and final test flight of Space Shuttle Columbia before commanding Discovery on its maiden flight in August 1984. His crew earned the nickname Ice Busters. Hartsfield's successfully removed hazardous ice buildup using the robotic arm. His third and last flight, STS-61A, was the first planned and controlled mission by a foreign customer and the first to fly 8 crew members. His recently retired from Raytheon as their Vice President of Aerospace Engineering, and Hartsfield. Brewster Shaw. Shaw's introduction to spaceflight came while flying on Columbia to the right of Veteran Commander John Young. STS-9 marked the first international shuttle crew to spaceflight maiden 10-day mission between November and December 1983. 2 years later, Shaw was commanding his own flight aboard Atlantis, deploying 3 satellites and conducting 2 6-hour spacewalks to test space station construction techniques. Shaw commanded his third and final mission, STS-28, in 1989, launching classified payloads to the Department of Defense. In January of this year, Shaw was named Vice President and General Manager of Boeing Space Exploration. Brewster Shaw. Ladies and gentlemen, these are the men and women who keep the dream alive. Let's give them another round of applause. And now, it is my pleasure to present to you the Executive Director of the Astronaut Scholarship Foundation, Lynn Lalonde.
Thank you, Andrea, and thank you to all of you who are here tonight to support the Astronaut Scholarship Foundation and to honor 3 new heroes to the Hall. Many of you may not know the Astronaut Scholarship Foundation operates with only 2 paid employees. We believe in watching the bottom line so that more of the money that you give goes directly to fund scholarships. But we are still able to pull off events of this magnitude with the help of a dynamic group of volunteers. who time and time again surprise me by donating their services and asking nothing in return. So quickly, I would like to thank Agnes, Ann, Astrid, Beth, Brandy, Brenda, Brooke, Daniel, E.
I do have a script here, but as most of you know, I like to talk. So, whether I say the script or not, I'm not quite sure at this point. What I would like to say, though, is it's absolutely a pleasure to have all of you here tonight to help us honor 3 Indians Football Day. This event occurs once every year, and it's getting bigger and bigger every year. And I guess we're going to have to increase the size of the Saturn V building if we keep this up much longer. I'd like to tell you, we normally try to do something quite unusual. Not this. We try to do something quite unusual when we have the induction ceremonies, and I was just talking to Jim Kennedy a little while ago, and we were reminded of last year when in the middle of the ceremonies they announced that we should all go to the front of the Saturn V building because they're going to launch a Titan IV rocket. Was anybody here last year when we did that? I thought that was a particularly nice thing for the Air Force to do for us for the induction. It lit up the sky, but I did talk to him and he said, well, I'm sorry, we can't do anything like that this year. So we really don't have a Titan IV to launch tonight. As a matter of fact, the last one that ever launched was last year on this thing. I'd like to thank a bunch of people. You know, you can't do these things. Lynn LeBlanc has just worked her fingers to the bone, and with a lot of help, I saw all the names that she went off before, but with a lot of help from the corporations and from people around this part of the world and around the country. We couldn't do this. We couldn't raise the money for scholarships for these students if you didn't help. So I'd kind of like to say thanks to a bunch of people and a bunch of companies. First off, Jim Kennedy, our great friend, director of the Kennedy Space Center. Jim, we're just so thankful that you are the director and that you are so good with us. Next, our great and good friend Dan LeBlanc, who is the COO of Delaware North Park Service here, who runs the visitor center and who's got plans. And let me tell you, he has got plans that will blow your mind about what's going to happen here. We're going to rival Disney World before he's through, if he gets his way, and probably throw in SeaWorld to boot. So we're really looking forward to all the great and wonderful things that are going to happen here. I tell you, it's going to be Now, let me talk about our NASA contractor friends, and I don't want to take a lot of time with this. The Boeing Company, we thank you, thank you, thank you. You are a very, very big supporter of the Astronaut Scholarship Foundation. We appreciate everything you do every single year. Now, I'm going to just throw in this one little extra thing. Now that we're inducting Brewster Shaw, we expect a little more, right? Got to keep it going. To Northrop, you've been wonderful to us. Northrop Grumman, you have always been good to us in the Scholarship Foundation. We have a sponsor that you may not be familiar with, but it's Chickasaw Nation Industries. They recently acquired All Points Logistics, a major NASA-approved small business company here in the local area, and to their CEO, Darrell Wright. I think I speak for all the astronauts when I say thank you very much. And to our friends at Lockheed Martin, thank you. To our friends at Lockheed Martin, thank you for all your continued support over the years. We've had it for years and years and years. You're a great company, and we appreciate and we really like the kind of support that you give us. 2 more companies that donate their time and effort. We're working on the money part, but they donate their time and effort, and your audio-visual stuff here tonight is something that they've done. It's Red Rocket, our ad agency in Orlando, and Communications Concept, and we're really thankful for all of the trade-offs that you do. We really appreciate it. Okay, we're getting down to the end here. You can eat in a minute, but I first got to say thank you to Delta Airlines. I think there are some students here tonight that are sponsored by Delta. I'd like to say thank you, Delta. We appreciate that. We love students wherever they are. We love students who are in school, not out on the streets. We love students who do well in school. And so we really think that you sponsoring these students is great. In fact, when those students stand up, I'd like to give them a round of applause from the companies and individuals, and I could be here all night if I had the list all over, but it's just so great that we have the kind of sponsorships that we have. In fact, let me talk just for a minute about the Astronaut Scholarship Foundation. The Scholarship Foundation was established in 1984 by the original 7 Mercury astronauts. You've already met Scotty Carpenter tonight, and Susie Cooper's here. These guys put together the Scholarship Foundation, and I believe, if my memory serves me right, that the first year they gave, and Al Miller, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the first year they gave 7 $1,000 scholarships. Is that correct? Okay. Today, we gave 18 scholarships worth $10,000 each. The Astronaut Scholarship Foundation started with the Mercury group, then the Gemini group, such as Tom Stafford and a bunch of other people, got involved in this thing and kind of went into the Apollo group, and then right now we're into the show. Like I said, we started out with 7 $1,000 scholarships. To date, we've given over $2 million in scholarships to students around the country. Now, I got to say one thing about these students. The students are not just your common, ordinary, everyday students. We do not fund or give scholarships to kids out of high school because we insist we know what kind of students are going to be before we give them the money. So we really go after sophomores, juniors, seniors, or students that are in degree programs. And we fund them then for a period like up to 3 years, and we'll take them all the way through PhD if they're worthy. And you're going to meet some of these students tonight. And I'm going to tell you, they're absolutely outstanding. In fact, I think right now, why don't we have the students come up here on stage? This would be a good time for you to introduce yourselves and let everybody know who you are and what you're doing. While they're coming out, one thing is a little bit. While they're coming up on stage, I just want to say that I had the opportunity to award 2 more scholarships this past year. As a matter of fact, we made a little trip up to Georgia Tech, which seems to be familiar with some people I know, and gave out a couple of scholarship checks. But it wasn't until afterwards that I sat down and spoke to these students that I realized what an amazing and necessary project we've established. These kids are going to take us to that new frontier, wherever that may be, and it is crucial that they get the funding to allow them to completely immerse themselves in their education. What I'm going to ask is for...
Kind of dark.
Good luck, I love it.
Hey,
Man, it was good seeing you. Come back.
yes.
See
tomorrow.
you again here?
You gonna be tomorrow?
Lunar module pilot for Apollos 8 and 11. He was the backup commander for Apollo 16, and he was the prime lunar module pilot for Apollo 13. He went on to command the approach and landing test of the shuttle out at Edwards Air Force Base on the Orbiter Enterprise. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome astronaut Fred Hayes. Welcome, Fred. Tell us a little bit about your happiest memory here at KSC. What's the first thing that strikes your mind about KSC?
Well, I've had several generations at KSC. In the Apollo program, we were obviously here for the test preparation of vehicles for launch. But I had a second life here. I went to work when I left the program for Northrop Grumman. And at one point, we were involved in a teaming arrangement with Lockheed Martin and won the shuttle processing contract. So I actually lived here on base. I was in a trailer complex out by the Launch Control Center for most of 4 years here at Kennedy. So I got to know a side of the place we normally didn't do as astronauts, because I was frankly more involved with design engineering and all the ground facilities and the nurturing and operations and support of those, and got to meet a lot of people. I know one, Charlie Floyd, I met earlier this morning, is here in the group somewhere, or in the back there. I don't know how many others of the old group or anybody else here from those days. So Charlie, you're the senior citizen here today. But at any rate, to mention the Apollo 13 mission, incidentally, was kind of one of those missions that doesn't always go as planned. It was quite different. I'd have to say shortly you're going to have some of the members that worked with me through that, the backup crew, and subsequently I turned around and went on the backup crew for Apollo 16 behind John Young. And I'd have to say I still regret not having the chance to land on the moon and would have changed places with Charlie Duke, or at least during the backup phase of 16, I was hoping John would break his leg. But he didn't, so I didn't get to go and have that opportunity. At any rate, it's good to be back here at Kennedy, a little nostalgic and somewhat funny to be thinking of how long ago those things were now, 36 years since Apollo 13. It's hard to believe. In fact, this trip down, I brought a granddaughter. So that gives you a little sense of my age these days. Anyway, glad to join you today.
Thank you, Fred. Our next guest hails from Chicago originally. He attended Oxford University in 1958, getting his degree in aeronautical engineering. He was designated as a naval aviator in 1960 and flew on board the USS Saratoga and the Franklin D. Roosevelt. He attended Advanced Aerospace Research Pilot School at Edwards Air Force Base, was selected by NASA as an astronaut in 1966. He served on the support crews for Apollos 8 and 11. He was a command module pilot on Apollo 13 until sidelined 72 hours before that launch. He served as the command module pilot on board Apollo 16 and went on to serve as the commander for STS-4, our last test flight of the shuttle, and STS-51C, a classified mission for the Department of Defense. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome astronaut T.K. Mattingly. Welcome, T.K. Tell us a little bit about your memories of Kennedy Space Center from those days.
Well, if you can rule the doctors out, all the memories about nice thing is this is the place where all great things start. And now with the shuttle, it's where they can come to a conclusion. It's really a rewarding thing. I think as one of the young kids in the beginning of this thing and finding out what the business is about, it's one thing to deal with engineering, but it's another thing to deal with the enormous effort that it takes to prepare one of these vehicles so you have a success. And there is an atmosphere here at the gate that is quite different from what you find in engineering centers and places where we manufacture things. This is where the rubber meets the road. And it is just remarkable, and many stories I tell people have to do with the intense dedication, total teamwork, cooperation that this team puts together in order to get things here. And it is one of those things that just when you smell wet weather and it's hot and warm, you think about that afternoon and thunder showers, and you have odd memories. It's thanks to this tremendous group of people that these things happen. And we're not through yet. The world is still turning, and there's more missions to go. So, thank you for allowing me to think.
Thank you, Jeff. Our next guest was born in Charlotte, North Carolina. He's a graduate of the United States Naval Academy of Annapolis, class of '57. He received his degree in aeronautics from MIT. He was a student and an instructor at the Advanced Aerospace Research Pilot School at Edwards Air Force Base in California. Selected by NASA in 1966 as an astronaut, he served on the support crew for Apollo 10. He was the Capcom on Apollo 11. He was specifically designated for that job by Neil Armstrong, and you'll recognize this voice when you hear it. He was the backup commander, the backup lunar module pilot for Apollo 13, and he served as the lunar module pilot on board Apollo 16, a mission that explored the Descartes region of the lunar highlands. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome astronaut Charlie Duke. Welcome, Charlie.
Thank you very much, Dave.
A few words
Welcome,
about
everybody.
Kennedy Space
Thank
Center.
you. I'm sorry?
Yeah, a few words about Kennedy Space Center. What are your favorite
Kennedy Space Center, good memories and bad memories. I think the good memories, some we had were as a result of a problem we had in our spacecraft on Apollo 16. We had a command module reaction control system, and they had to bring the vehicle back to the VAB, and then they had a rollout again. We missed the first rollout, so we came down to the second rollout. I brought my family with us, and it was really a wonderful family time. And my wife and I were just going through those pictures just the other day and brought back a lot of memories. And now grandkids the same age as my kids back at the time of Apollo. It's been a long time. Probably the worst memory I have of Kennedy is when I caught the measles on Apollo 13 and exposed everybody to the measles. And it was, astronauts don't get measles, the doctors say. You know, kids get measles, but I got the measles and unfortunately exposed everybody, and Ken didn't get to go on 13 because of that, but we had a great crew in Apollo 16, and Ken and I, John, had a fantastic trip, and the ride out to the pad that morning, the 16th of April, liftoff was just a tremendous exciting time for me, as was the whole trip. So we're glad to be back here. It's always wonderful to come to Kennedy, and thank you all for coming and supporting our program, and hope you have a great morning, and we look forward to your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Charlie. And our fourth and last guest hails from San Francisco. Spent part of his youth in Orlando, just up the road here. He received an aeronautical engineering degree from Georgia Tech. He entered the Navy after graduation and attended test pilot school at Tuxet River Air Station. He was assigned as test pilot at Pax River, flying both the Crusader and the Phantom. He set 2 time to climb records in the Phantom. He was selected by NASA in 1963 with the second group of astronauts, and his career is, to say the least, legendary. Pilot on Gemini 3, commander of Gemini 10, command module pilot for Apollo 10, commander of Apollo 16, Commander of STS-1, the first flight of Columbia. Commander of STS-9, the first flight of Space Lab, the precursor to today's International Space Station. Ladies and gentlemen, astronaut John Young. John? Welcome again, John.
Well, it's sure nice to be here. Can everybody hear me all right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. It's always good to come to the Kennedy Space Center. We just spent a couple of weeks down here last week talking about the 25th anniversary of the first space shuttle mission, and we had a lot of fun talking to the people who did the work. And believe it or not, when Crip and I were training for STS-1, we went over to the processing facility and we asked how many people worked on the Apollo missions, and about half of them raised their hand. And how many people worked on the Gemini missions? About a quarter of them raised their hand. And then I let it go at that, and then a bunch of guys come up to me after the thing and said, "Why didn't you ask if we worked on the Mercury missions or not?" There's a lot of ancient history associated with this, but I've been really proud to be associated with these people that do such good work over here in the orbit processing facility. We probably got somewhere between 16 and 18 more shuttle missions to fly to get the space station put together, and we got to keep working on it. And there's going to be an enormous amount of work that's going on around here at the Kennedy Space Center when we start working on the President's vision of the space exploration going back to the moon and on to Mars. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and I think it's going to be a lot of really important progress made in the technologies that allow us to live and work on the moon, totally revolutionize the way we live and work on planet Earth. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, what we're here right now for is your questions. Any questions that you have for the crew, please feel free to raise your hand. We'll bring a microphone over to you. Yes, sir, a question right here.
Yes, sir, for John Young and Commander Duke. When you were on the surface of the moon, do you often look back or look up at the moon and pinch yourself and realize that you were actually there, and that when you were there on the moon, was it surreal, or did you actually look around and you just knew you were there? It would almost seem to me like it would be a dream.
Well, when we stepped out on the surface of the moon, we were 20 minutes behind the flight plan, and we tried to catch up the whole time. So those incidental thoughts of where you are and what you're doing and all that stuff never entered your mind. I think we got a lot of work done. We discovered rocks up there that were totally different from the rocks that scientists said we'd find up here. They said we were going up there and find rhyolite rocks, and we'd been to a whole bunch of field trips and seen rhyolites all over the country in the United States. You know, there's a bunch out there at the Hemis Crater, the Bandelier Tuff, and the Bishop Tuff out in California, the crater out there, and you know, there's a lot of rhyolites, and we didn't find any up there, and the scientists argued that me and Charlie, being a bunch of old fighter pilots, didn't know what we're looking at. All the way back, I said, why don't you wait till we bring these rocks back and you can see what they are. Turned out they were 3.92 billion years old, and they're anorthosites and wretches, really old rock, and the highlands of the moon seems to be made out of that stuff. And there's not a whole bunch of anorthosites in the old USA, but we've seen enough of them in the USA at the Duluth, Gabbro, and out in California to know that, yeah, there's anorthosites and what they look like. So it's a lot of fun.
Any other questions? Feel free to raise your hands. We'll bring the microphones over to you. Got one over there, Billy?
Yes, right here. Yes, sir. Hi, I'm really privileged to be here today. I was inspired by you guys and other astronauts to actually do rocket science myself. I work on ejection seat rocket motors, and I was very thrilled to see when the Apollo went down. I remember running down in front of the picture tube and watching the Apollos and the various, and I really like the propulsion and issues of that nature. And I know you guys have gone through very extensive training and a lot of different things. And I recently heard something about, it was a group of women they call the Mercury 13. And I don't know if you've heard of that, and I wanted to know, were you aware of the program and what was your impression about it?
We never heard of the Mercury 13. That's a true story. It's a true story. You know, President Eisenhower said they wanted test pilots, just like test pilots for astronauts, and there weren't any women test pilots in those days, and nobody ever thought about having anything but men test pilots back in those days. Nobody ever told us about any Mercury 13.
Okay, a question, I have one right over here from the, I'm sorry, yes. Have one right here from the gentleman.
Good afternoon. Hey, I would like to know for the backup crew from Apollo 13, when did you first find out about the problem, and how serious did you think it was when you first heard about it?
I was in mission control at the time, and when they said, Houston, we've got a problem, I went down in the trenches, and oxygen tank 2, the instrumentation had disappeared, and I was looking over Cy Liebergott's shoulder, and the oxygen tank 1 was leaking down, and Cy says at first glance, he said, Flight, it looks like instrumentation to me, and I could tell by the way that thing was leaking down, it wasn't instrumentation, but I said, Cy, you sure that's instrumentation? Anyway, so I really thought we lost 2 oxygen tanks, and I thought, and they were the only 2 we had, and they had to run the fuel cells and everything else, and I thought we lost the crew. That's what I thought. And it was amazing, all the work that went on to get those folks back. And I was proud to participate in it. I think they were up there for another 140 hours or so, and I think I was awake for about 120 of it while we were going to meetings, as Ken can tell you, Charlie can tell you. We spent hours and hours in meetings and hours in simulators trying to do the best thing and get those folks back. And it was amazing the amount of work that went on at the Johnson Space Center to think of all the new ways to make things work. And a lot of people individually did great, but I think one of the great contributions was when Glenn Lunny, who was the flight director, got them immediately into the lunar module and had it fired up. That was the right thing to do.
Gentlemen, I've got your next question right here.
Good afternoon. I'm just wondering, with your unique experiences, I mean, going into space and actually being on the moon, if any of these things had any impact or effect on your spiritual beliefs?
To me, no. I wasn't. It wasn't a spiritual experience. I don't think many of us. It was an adventure. It wasn't spiritual. It wasn't philosophical. We were just on a big adventure. And I look back now. I didn't feel close to God. I wasn't searching for God in those days in my life, and so it wasn't something that was spiritual in nature. It was just this adventure. Since we got back, a lot of us have had different experiences, but it wasn't. It wasn't a result of the flight.
Fred, you were the one on board that Apollo 13 spacecraft, and there's been a lot of talk about what the conditions were like on board that vehicle. Tell us what home was like on board Apollo 13.
Well, the conditions, I guess, I described from the point of the explosion, there was a great amount of confusion. And maybe John knew what was going on looking over Si's shoulder, but we sure didn't on board. And there was quite a bit of time there, for probably minutes, trying to figure out what really had happened and what was going to happen next. We had an unusual amount of, I call it false alarms on, because the valves had moved state. Because of the explosion that caused false warning lights, that kind of thing. The conditions, though, and I guess it was referring to environmental, changed dramatically as we went on through the PC+2 maneuver. We did a couple hours past the moon and had to severely power down. In fact, they took it down to a lower level than I had anticipated. I had figured out After the first maneuver we made, I had data on water usage against amp hour and amps, and I had us down to about 18 amps to get the power down. That would get us pretty much back except for water, although I didn't figure the lithium hydroxide at all. And Mission Control worked out a power down and took us down to 12 amps about. But you think about, we have 30-volt systems, so that's like 300 and something watts. So it's like 2 of your 3-way light bulbs on the whole one on the third click. So that's how much power we're consuming. And as a result, it got very cold. We did not have a temperature gauge in the LEM. I can only tell you it got very cold even with 3 sets of underwear on, which is all we had. In my lunar boots, I had those on to help keep warm. And when they recovered the capsule on the ship and inspected it a couple hours after splashdown, they found the water tanks frozen. So indeed, it had to be in the 30s. So it was tough from that standpoint. We got rather sporadic sleep in that kind of environment. And but I'll have to say, just as John described, I talked to many of Mission Control people and what they went through, and I still think I got more sleep than some of those got on the ground. But it was got more miserable when I developed this lower urinary tract infection, which on top of everything else gave me some chills and fever. Not incapacitating, it was kind of like having the flu. Many of you here have had the flu, you feel lousy, but you can still do what you need to do. But the important thing was we got back.
Guys, we have a question over here to your left through the trees.
Oh, this question is actually for TK. I've been an electrician all my life, and one of the things that intrigued me was the process where you went into the simulator and was trying to get it down to 12 amps. And you're going through the sequence to put them in the right sequence to keep it at 12 or below. And my logic tells me it doesn't matter if I put on 5 lights, when they're all on, the total's going to come to the total no matter what sequence I put them on. So how by changing the sequence in which you turn things on lowered the amperage?
How unused the remaining resources on Apollo 13 was the subject of one of the most massive systems engineering activities that we've ever seen certainly in this kind of a short period of time. There was no single answer. It was a question of, as soon as the initial steps have been taken, and I've already alluded to the wisdom of getting the vehicle on a good trajectory and getting the lunar module powered up so that we had a propulsion and a capability to provide life support. And it's one of these lessons in life when you don't know the answer that goes all the way to the end. The most important thing is do no harm and keep reserving the option for another opportunity. And so the flight control teams had broken down into a series of teams around the building that were working on selected problems that had been placed in a priority order when the answers were needed. And this orchestration went on, but it was, in fact, as you point out, it was driven by what do you do with power. And it's remembering that it is not, if you got a battery, it isn't just how much you draw from it at an instant, but over a period of time, how much total energy you take out. The problem that was perplexing to everybody was that while the lunar module was attached, we had battery sources that were completely adequate. But we had to power up a spacecraft called the Command Service Module that was essentially frozen and had been unpowered for a long time. And so spacecraft are built to hold a particular thermal environment. And that means we have heaters around to control it. So one of the big challenges the electrical people had was all of these heaters that were embedded in the various pieces of equipment. As soon as you turned them on, the heater was going to draw down the battery instead of the function. And so they had to devise a sequence, which turned out to be relatively complex, of how they could bring up the equipment in the CSM without drawing down the batteries, which meant they had to do a lot of it without instrumentation that is normally available. And so it was all done by calculation. And putting that checklist together, it occupied probably, I don't know, there must have been at least 100 people in the Mission Control Center working on that problem alone, backed up by literally thousands of people at the various contractors that were all calling in information around the clock in order to put that together. And John Aaron was the ECOM that pulled these things all together. And it is probably, under the gun, one of the most impressive systems engineering activities ever performed.
Ken had to read that checklist up to him, so I'm glad it took him a little longer to get back because the checklist was so long. They would have gotten back before the checklist was complete.
All right, gentlemen, your next question is in the back here. This is John from New Jersey.
Good afternoon. This question is addressed to all four of you. We Americans are proud of your achievements. You represent the space program. And history will remember you through the documentaries, Apollo 13, Tom Hanks, and From the Earth to the Moon. I believe, John, you were the advisor, technical advisor to that, From the Earth to the Moon? No? Okay. Well, my question is, how does it subjectively feel to see yourselves and your achievements portrayed, that's how the world will remember what you individually did?
I'd have to say I could take that on to the movie Apollo 13. I had no problems with the movie except a couple of instances. They used quite a bit of foul language in this movie. That gave it a PG-13 rating. Looking at the transcripts, I was surprised, frankly, after the flight. I think Lovell said hell once. The water valve cut off. And late in the mission, and he thought that was something we didn't even mess with. And so that none of that was there. They had old Jack arguing about the navigation. We had no navigation capability forward. And all the mid courses were done by mission control anyway, that we used on all the missions. There was no reason to doubt that. So there were some of those things, I'll call it added for drama. That probably, obviously it made it a good Hollywood movie. It sold a lot of tickets. Sold it, still the biggest ticket selling movie that Tom Hanks has ever made. So it did well in the sense of what a Hollywood movie is. It's a business. They invest a lot of money. They want to make money. They did well. I'd hope that we're all looked at as what we are. We're engineers. We've grown up piloting craft of different sort with test pilots. We enjoy being part of a development program. That's what we like and grew up and trained and what we do for a living. And I hope they just look at who we were part of this. It was a great program. We were all lucky to be around at the right time, born at the right time, to have to be a part of this Apollo, which isn't going to come around too often. And it was the big program of the 20th century. There's no question about it. So I just hope we look at us as part of that, the big team. Amazing thing is when I talk to people, I often ask the audience a question, how many people were on the Apollo program? And I very, very seldom get an answer that's even up to 100,000. Peak of the program, we had over 400,000 people working on Apollo in every state in this union except one. So it really was not our program, it was our program in that big sense of a lot of people, all different kinds of skills. But anyway, that's the way I hope they look at us, just as some people at the long cascade of pioneers who were involved in flying machines. Help us get a little higher and farther.
Hey guys, we have time for one last question that comes from the young man right here.
When you were coming back from space, when you were entering the Earth's atmosphere, did you feel the heat from the capsule?
Re-entry, did the heat penetrate the capsule, guys? Not in that way.
Yeah, can you hear me? Okay. Yeah, on the re-entry on Apollo, anyway, let John and Ken, those two guys who flew the space shuttle, but for Apollo, you come in, when you cold soak, you get it cold inside, as cold as you can get it, down in the 60s as I recall, and as you come in, the heat shield absorbs the heat and ablates away, so it doesn't, you don't feel the intense heat inside the spacecraft, and by the time you get on the parachutes, I think we were up maybe 70, 72 degrees, so it was very shirt sleeves inside, so you didn't feel the heat from the outside. It was pretty spectacular though, was looking out the windows.
Yeah, because the temperature outside the window is 7,000 degrees. So you hope those thermodynamicists guys got it right for once, you know.
Brett, any thoughts about re-entry?
Sorry?
Any thoughts about re-entry? What was that on board?
I just say it, even take a little further than Charlie. We were obviously still very cold in the capsule. After we splashed down and they opened the hatch, a big cloud of mist, of the cold air that misted poured out of the capsule. So it was still cold even after entry. And in fact, like I said, they found the water tanks frozen several hours later when they opened it up on the hangar deck, and it was still cold. So the heat shield does a great job of getting rid of that 7,000 degrees for you.
Guys, before we wrap it up here, how about final thoughts? Final thoughts on the space program, your involvement in it, and where you see it going from here. John, let's start with you.
Well, I'm a bad one to start with. I really believe that during this century we'll industrialize the moon. And when we do that, we'll totally revolutionize the technologies that we have here on planet Earth. Living to work on the moon is going to develop the technologies that will change the way we live and make it possible for civilization to preserve. Exploration, that's what exploration is all about, preserving the species over the long haul. I mean, you know, those rascally fire ants that run around in my backyard and run around to the front yard. That's a long distance. They're really explorers. And they're survivors, too. Even though I pour that fire ant killer off. And human beings are the same way. They're survivors. Well, there can be bad things happen to planet Earth over the long haul. And when we learn how to live and work on the moon and have 100% control of our environment, we end up having reliable and uninterruptible and be energy rich on this planet. And we end up being able to live in 100% control of our environment on this planet, then we'll keep on going on this planet, and industrializing the moon will allow us to do that. Putting people up there, we can send electricity back to Earth cheap, and it won't be fossil fuels. You know, by 2050, if India and Russia are using fossil fuels at the same rate we are, India and China and Russia, it's 950 million barrels a day of oil. Well, there ain't 950 million barrels a day of oil, and nobody knows how to get that much oil. You know, so we got to look at alternative energy sources, and we ought to start now. We got to stop worrying about $3 a gallon gasoline and start worrying about the future of our children and our grandchildren. And I believe space exploration is ready to do that.
TK, final thoughts. What do you think?
That's a hard end. Now, let me depart for just a second. There's a bunch of young folks here that probably don't care or understand some of this technical stuff that we find is interesting. But there's another aspect to this business of being out in space. And it's not the spiritual thing that we think of in terms of religion, yet it is very unusual at the sights you can see and the impression that they leave. And so for all of you kids, you're going to get a chance to go to places that we didn't get to go. I joined this program not believing I would get to go to the moon, but hoping desperately that I could be on the first Mars mission. And then I thought, well, maybe I can manage the first Mars mission. Now I want one of you kids to go so I can watch it on TV. It is going to be spectacular. But the most impressive sights are going to come right here on planet Earth. When you get to watch the sunrise and sunset around the Earth, and you see those brilliant colors flashing at you every 90 minutes, and you look down and you see thunderstorms that look like popcorn, and they're like trees on a Christmas lights that flash, and you see all of that. You see fires out in the desert. You see smoke storms and fires that cover thousands of miles of lightning chains. And then you step out to the moon, and now sunrise and sunset isn't vivid colors, but a bright white flash that illuminates due to all the reflections off the hills. Even though you know that the surface of the moon is dark, it is white when the sun hits it. And the most stimulating picture that we've seen to date, and I bet it'll be in our memories forever, is watching the Earth rise over the moon. That'll never go away, and I apologize, but no picture has ever captured the beauty of that scene. And so you guys need to go get it.
Well, my hope, and I really believed it as we were starting into the Apollo program, was that things would continue at some similar pace. Rather than us sitting up here, you'd have some guys or ladies that went to Mars by now. I really thought we had the springboard and the technology, we could have moved on out. That has not happened. I look at the space program, though, in the very long range. It's, you know, a continuation of exploration, but in the light that if you consider we're the only creatures, at least I know of, that could build spacecraft, could build, hopefully even someday, a starship. I think it's possible, and it's a unique talent that almost by divine providence we've been given. There's no other creatures I know can do that. And it's a very good side of what a human endeavor should be. I haven't looked at it since about 1988, but I read a RAND study at that time where we in the world at large, counting third world countries and everybody, we're spending roughly $1 trillion a year for weapons and armies and things like that because of our mutual distrust or fear. And so I don't, people come at me about the space program about spending money. I don't look at spending a few percent of what we spend down that road as a worthwhile thing to do for the good side of what the human race can do.
It's been a pleasure being with you, and I just echo what my three good friends and teammates have said, and I think the future for space is bright. Hopefully, we've got, I think NASA's got a focus now after shuttle and after space station is to go back to the moon and then hopefully on to Mars. And I support that, and I'm going to do all I can to help that get there. And mostly it'll be just words of encouragement. We're sort of retired here. Nobody's too interested in what we think about it anymore, but it's still good to be an encourager. We're here for the Astronaut Scholarship Foundation, and we've got, let's see, 18 scholarships, and most of those kids are here and told to give us some report. And I said, looking at those the bright kids and their desires and technology in the future, I think we're going to be in great shape. So all the kids here, I encourage you to study, do your best, and aim high in whatever you do. Thank you all a lot for coming.
It is our privilege to be with you gentlemen today, and I think on behalf of everyone here, I want to thank you all, not only for your service to our country, but for the inspiration that you provided to generations of people all over the world, people of my generation, the young people out here. Even if we can't all go to the moon or go to Mars, we can take your cue to do our very best at whatever we do, be the best at whatever we are, and in that way, be a part of this great world of exploration. John Young, T.K. Mattingly, Fred Hayes, Charlie Duke. Thank you, gentlemen. Each and every one of you for being with us on this very, very special day. Thank you very much, and enjoy your day here at the John F. Kennedy Space Center. Thanks very much.
If you did what? You don't inside, they don't need it. It's when you go outside that you need to see, because think about it this way. Right now we're starting
to Mars and Pluto, and will soon return us to flight with the Space Shuttle Discovery. All the astronauts that you will meet today began their journey here, which makes Kennedy Space Center truly a special place. And now, it is my honor to introduce to you the current members of the Astronaut Hall of Fame. Joining us today, one of the original Mercury 7 astronauts, the second American to orbit the Earth, and the only man to conquer both outer space and undersea, Scott Carpenter. He was a Gemini astronaut, walked on the moon on Apollo 16, and commanded the first flight of the Space Shuttle and STS-9, John Young. He flew on Gemini 6, the first space rendezvous mission, and Gemini 9, orbited the moon on Apollo 10, and commanded the Apollo-Soyuz test program, Tom Stafford. He piloted Gemini 11. During that mission, performed a 44-minute spacewalk. He went on to fly as command module pilot of Apollo 12, Dick Gordon. He flew for 11 days in Earth orbit on Apollo 7, the first manned Apollo mission, a flight that proved the worthiness of the spacecraft designed to carry humans to the moon. Walt Cunningham. He served as a lunar module pilot on the fateful flight of Apollo 13 and went on to command the Space Shuttle approach and landing tests aboard the orbiter Enterprise, Fred Hayes. He explored the moon's Gili-Traumaro region with Alan Shepard during the 1971 Apollo 14 mission. Edgar Mitchell. He drove a lunar rover across a wide plateau during 3 excursions on the moon's Descartes Mountains with John Young on the Apollo 16 mission in 1972, Charlie Duke. He orbited the moon as command module pilot on Apollo 16 and commanded 2 space shuttle missions, including the 4th and final orbital test flight of the shuttle Columbia, Thomas Mattingly. He was the science pilot aboard the first Skylab space station and became the first medical doctor to practice in orbit, Joseph Kerwin. He used his knowledge as a solar physicist on 2 space missions, on a 59-day Skylab flight in 1973 and an 11-day space shuttle trip in 1983, Owen Garriott. He spent 59 days in orbit as a member of the 2nd Skylab mission and then commanded the 3rd flight of the space shuttle, Jack Lowden. He commanded the Skylab 4 mission, the 3rd and final manned visit to the United States first space station, and with his crewmates shared the world record for individual time in space, Jerry Carter. He spent 84 days in orbit as the science pilot of Skylab 4, where he was responsible for making extensive observations of the sun. Edward Gibson. He was the command module pilot on the 1975 Apollo-Soyuz test project, the first link up in orbit between spaceships of the United States and Soviet Union, and he later commanded 3 space shuttle missions. Vance Brand. My good friend, he piloted the first space shuttle mission in 1981, commanded 3 other space shuttle flights, and served as director of the Kennedy Space Center. Bob Griffin. He flew on 3 space shuttle missions, including command of the first shuttle flight after Challenger was lost in 1986. Rick Howard. He flew 2 shuttle flights in space and has piloted 114 different types of aircraft, including the 747 shuttle carrier aircraft and NASA's B-52 launch aircraft. Gordon Fullerton. He piloted 1 shuttle mission and commanded 3 others, including the maiden flight of Endeavour, and later served as chief of the astronaut office, Dan Brandenstein. He commanded 4 of the 5 shuttle flights on which he flew, including the first docking of a shuttle with the Russian space station Mir. Robert Hoot Gibson. Please give a warm round of applause for the Hall of Fame. My pleasure to introduce to you the director of the Kennedy Space Center, Mr. James Kennedy.
Thank you, John, and good afternoon to all of you. Welcome to your Kennedy Space Center. It is your Kennedy Space Center. This is a privilege that we have to serve at your center. Yes, it's got my name on the marquee and not yours. It is your Kennedy Space Center, and it is such a privilege to have all of you join us on this very special day. Like Hoot Gibson says when he flies his airline, we know you have a choice. We know you have a choice about being here today, so you could have been watching the Kentucky Derby, sipping on mint juleps, but you came here because you care about our program, you care about these heroes of ours, and you wanted to share with us today. And it's a great privilege to have you here. I know the audience is filled with employees, government and contractor, with astronaut families, with friends, with the general public. To all of you, we say welcome. I would like to point out a very special group of 4 men who served this country in World War II, known as the Tuskegee Airmen. Judge Decatur and 3 other Tuskegee Airmen, I was unable to find where you are. I only have 3 minutes, and I wasn't planning on 3 of them being spent celebrating the Tuskegee Airmen. Welcome to the Kennedy Space Center to you all. Because I am short on time, I'll skip over and tell you, I don't get a chance to say this a lot when I'm around other center directors because I'm sure they feel the same way, but I believe KSC is the crown jewel of NASA. I cannot cherish the rich history that is here. Some of our history is right above your heads, as some of the men on this stage have flew on a vehicle exactly like this. 45 years ago yesterday, we celebrated the 45th anniversary of a very special occasion, human spaceflight for the United States. Al Shepard flew, as we all know. His daughter, Laura Shepard Churchley, is with us today. I'm not sure where Laura is either, but to Laura I say, God bless you and thank you for your service in your father's footsteps. I will say in closing that it is, thank you, so long. In closing, I will say that it is T-minus 55 days and counting for the launch of STS-121. target date is July 1st of this year, and it's going to be a celebration, to be sure, to see us return where we rightfully belong with our humans in space. The solid rocket boosters are stacked. The external tank has made it to the boosters. Next Friday, Orbiter Discovery will roll into the VAB and be mated, and a week later, the entire vehicle will roll to the pad for that tremendous return to flight. In closing, I have a word from my boss, Administrator Michael Griffin, that goes like this. Good afternoon. All the men and women who make up NASA's astronaut corps are extraordinary individuals. Those select few who have been inducted into the U.S. Astronaut Hall of Fame have distinguished themselves through their technical excellence, commitment to mission, and remarkable leadership qualities. Charlie Bolden, Hank Hartsfield, and Brewster Shaw are among those astronauts whom the phrase, "some may equal, but none will excel," is certainly most fitting. Gentlemen. In closing, Mike says each of these honorees has contributed significantly to the progress we have registered during the last 25 years of space shuttle operations on 10 separate missions. To these brave men and all of you, I bid you a good afternoon. Administrator Griffin, thank you and enjoy your afternoon at the Kennedy Space Center.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. And now your host for today's induction ceremony. He orbited the moon on the 1971 Apollo 15 mission, and on the homeward journey took a far-out spacewalk to retrieve film cassettes from 2 moon mapping cameras. Ladies and gentlemen, the chairman of the Astronaut Scholarship Foundation, astronaut Al Wood.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Kennedy Space Center. Jim Kennedy, our good friend, has already welcomed you, but I want to give you a special welcome from the Astronaut Scholarship Foundation. There are a lot of things, and I've got a script here that I'm going to try and follow. Sometimes I don't do that very well, but we'll try and make it fun. What I want you to do is look up. Just look up. Look at this thing you're sitting under. Can you believe that? 40 years ago, these things were launched, carrying men around the Earth, around the moon, and to make lunar landings. Lunar landing. Men have walked on a foreign planet. The guys that are sitting here on the stage are the guys who not only made it possible with precursor flights, but they're the guys who did it. Today we're here to enshrine 3 truly outstanding space shuttle astronauts into the Astronaut Hall of Fame. The Astronaut Scholarship Foundation is responsible for overseeing the selection process, and believe me, it's not an easy job because so many qualified people have flown in space. For the initial induction of shuttle astronauts in 2001, we narrowed the field to those who flew the program's first 3 years, 1981 to 1983, well beyond 83, and who had been out of the astronaut corps for at least 5 years. For this year's induction, we carried over some nominees from the first ballot and added all those who made shuttle trips in 1984. We submitted 25 names to a committee of 17, including former NASA flight directors and officials, journalists who covered the space program, and head of the National Air and Space Museum and others associated with the program. Now this has all taken place in 2001. The committee did an exceptional job and picked other astronauts inducted into the Hall of Fame earlier from the Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, Skylab, particularly Skylab, Apollo Soyuz, and Space Shuttle programs. I mentioned that the Astronaut Scholarship Foundation was responsible for overseeing the selection process. So let me explain what it is. The foundation was established back in 1984 by the original 7 Mercury astronauts. Actually, there's an 8th, but I think we heard from him last night. But the original 7 Mercury astronauts, particularly Al Shepard, started the Astronaut Scholarship Foundation, and it was the Mercury 7 Foundation back in those days. The year, I believe the number is that we gave 7 scholarships at $1,000 each. Just yesterday, we selected and we will fund 18 scholarships to the tune of $10,000 each. A total of $180,000 this year. We have funded scholarships to the tune of more than $2 million. I got to tell you what our goal is, because you've got to have a goal if you're going to do what we're doing. Our goal is to eventually provide 1 scholarship for every astronaut in the Hall of Fame. Think of that. There are 63 in there right now. We can fund 18 this year. But I assure you, we're working, and we're going to achieve a goal of 1 scholarship for every astronaut in the Hall of Fame. We have had a very good year in the Scholarship Foundation. Another of the Foundation's functions is to serve as a consultant to the Astronaut Hall of Fame. Under an agreement we have with Delaware North Parks and Resorts, Inc., Delaware North, 4 years ago, began operating the Hall of Fame, and it is now part of the Kennedy Space Center Visitor Complex. And I think that's the greatest thing that we could have done for the Hall of Fame, and thank you, Jim, for helping make that possible. The Hall of Fame is located just a few miles east of here right now. Probably going to see some moves there someday, we hope. Over this way. But it's right there at the end of the NASA Causeway, and it's well worth visiting. And I truly mean that. It contains the world's largest collection of personal astronaut memorabilia. And again, got to thank Jim Kennedy, our friend. He has been wonderful to us. He's a great guy. I might even buy a motorcycle. And I'd like to thank Dan LeBlanc. Dan is the COO of Delaware North. And thank these two for serving as hosts for the celebration today. Thank you so much.
You know, if you think that these guys here ever forget about what they did for, today we had a little tour of the vehicle assembly building, and while we're there, they're asking all these, well, will the next vehicle be able to fit inside? You're going to have to modify it. And then Walt Cunningham, there's a nozzle from one of the engines, and he's like sticking his head inside it, and he's looking all around. They never forget. You know, it's like jumping out of a cake back there. And now for the moment we've been waiting for, the induction of the 5th class of Space Shuttle astronauts into the Astronaut Hall of Fame. They will be introduced in the order in which they flew. Our first inductee is Henry W. Hartsfield, Jr. Hartsfield joined NASA's astronaut ranks 2 months after the first manned lunar landing, after being reassigned from the canceled U.S. Air Force Manned Orbiting Laboratory program. He piloted the 4th and final test flight of the Space Shuttle Columbia before commanding Discovery on its maiden flight in August of 1984. His crew earned the nickname Ice Busters when Hartsfield successfully removed a hazardous ice buildup using the robotic arm. His 3rd and last mission, STS-61A, was the first planned and controlled by a foreign customer and the first to fly 8 crew members. Today he serves as Vice President for Aerospace Engineering Services at Raytheon.
Yeah. can understand that we don't get this procedure business too well. And I didn't get to see the film, so I don't know whether they're talking about Henry that I know or somebody else. Because it must have been a good show. We should keep it. I would like to introduce Henry to you, from my perspective, as someone who's known him for a long, long time. In fact, our careers crossed before we even knew each other. We graduated from college together. Henry was ahead of me. He was a physics major, and we didn't really understand what those kind of aliens did. But they thought that was it'd do more than the last guy did, prepare your place in line. And we had all learned what a difficult job it was to stay ahead of the timeline and do all the things that people had asked for. Hank comes in and solves the problem. And Hank says, you look out the window and I'll run the spacecraft. And so the real command module pilot on Apollo 16 is standing there. The mistakes were mine. The successes are his. And he put this story together and we got a chance to do that, filling up the flight plan. These are the kinds of things you don't hear about. And they happen every day. And so rather than go down a litany of Hank's many contributions, which we could all read about, I would like to make a couple of last observations. History does funny things to us. It gives us opportunities that we never expected in places and in locations, and gives us jobs we didn't anticipate. Luck is involved. But of all of us in life that have lucky opportunities, some people are better prepared than others to capitalize on that opportunity when it comes along. Hank is one of those people. The chemists would call him a catalyst. From your high school chemistry, you remember, the catalyst is one of those things that is unchanged by the process, but has a profound impact on the outcome. Wherever Hank has gone, that's been the case. He is a human organization catalyst who brings with him extraordinary professional and personal integrity, unbelievable intellectual capacity, and the finest sense of humanity and humor that he shares with us all that makes things happen. It is really a pleasure to say, Hank, this is an honor you have well deserved, and I'm alive because of it. Thank you.
Boy, that's tough to follow. I have to kind of choke back the tears a little bit, but I want to thank everybody here. I particularly am gratified by being recognized by my peers in such a great group as this, many who voted to get me in this organization. Right now, I'd like to take a couple of minutes and just tell you about a dream a fellow had once. He was in the Air Force. He was stationed at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And he was getting a haircut one day in May '61. And a fellow by the name of Al Shepard made a flight. Immediately he decided, that's what I want to do. And he did a little research on how do you get selected for the space program. And all of them had been test pilots. I said, okay. The guy said, I will go to the test pilot school. He researched that and found out that the pilots had to have 1,500 hours of diversified flying time and other requirements. He met all those except the flying time. and decided to go get the flying time so that he could qualify for the test pilot school. He did that and was accepted. That person that had the dream was I. And I was really excited about getting there. And after graduating and being on the staff for a short period of time, what happened was what TK talked about. We had the opportunity for the program. I was selected for the MOE program in '66. And in 1969, President Nixon canceled the program. So I said, well, I was really sad. My dream had been broken right there. But then NASA came along, and there were 14 of us, potential crew members on MOL, or MOL as we call it. And they said, come on down, we'll talk to you. And they took the 7 youngest of us to NASA. It's a great thing for me. Got to work on Apollo 16 for Ken, as you heard there. And it turned out to be a very great thing for me. Now, the opportunities that I thought I was going to have with NASA when I had this opportunity to go down there did not materialize as I expected, because a lot of seats went away. Apollo 18 was canceled, Apollo 19 was canceled. They stopped talking about Skylab 3. They decided they wouldn't fly Skylab 2. They did fly the first one, the second one went into Smithsonian. So all those seats went away, and the only thing to do was continue to work on the shuttle, which was announced later on. And I spent time working on the flight control system development for the space shuttle. Got my opportunity around the turn of the 80s there, when it was placed on the crew with Ken, which was a great boon for me. We had the opportunity to back up STS-2 and 3 and then fly 4. Ken was a great teacher and a great, I'd say great, he was tough, taskmaster. He really kept me hopping. I've learned a great deal from him, and for that, I'm extremely grateful to Ken. He was not a morning person. I had to deal with that. He was grouchy in the morning. In fact, I remember just before the flight, I was being interviewed by somebody from the press, and they asked me about him, and I told him that he was not a morning person. I said, in fact, he had a blood draw the other day, and the medic said his blood corpuscles were very grouchy. So, but we had a great flight, and it was the first step allowed me to fly a couple more times, 2 flights which I thoroughly enjoyed. On that STS-4, we landed at Edwards Air Force Base and were greeted by President and Mrs. Reagan. That was really exciting for us. And Ken and I had a discussion before we landed. We were very worried about how we would feel. You know, that we discovered from the early flights after 6 or 7 days in space, you're a little bit shaky when you come down. And I was worried about what if we fall down and we meet the president, you know? And I told Ken, I had a line, if we fall down, I'm going to say, nice pair of shoes, Mr. President. But those are the kind of things we do. We had a lot of fun. I did achieve the goal that I had set out. It had a few rough spots in the way. I have always encouraged young people to set goals for themselves and then try their best to achieve them. You will never know how far you can go unless you try. You won't know if you can achieve a goal unless you try. You just got to go after it. But I want to say also that I couldn't have gone where I did without people. It's not individuals that totally that make a program go. It's the people that make it go. And we have some of the best people that I've ever worked with. Some I never met, but they supported us. Hundreds, thousands of people to make all this happen. Some of us that are fortunate to fly, we're the visible part, but the real strength is in the people. I'm proud of these people. I'm very proud that the ones that I've known and worked with. I appreciate their support. I'm reminded of something that happened hundreds of years ago. Sir Isaac Newton once, he had an argument going with another scientist by the name of Hooke, and they disagreed on something. Eventually, Newton had to admit that Hooke was right. And then summing that up one day, he said something I know you've all heard. He said, "If I have seen further, it is because I stood on the shoulders of giants." So that's the kind of the way I feel here. I'm dedicated to helping young people. I think from what you read in the news about how many people are interested in science and engineering today, that we are hurting. We're going to lose our place as a nation in space if we don't do something about getting these young people that have the talent, the necessary means that they can go get that education and help us stay successful. Again, I want to thank everybody. If I went too long, forgive me. I'm sorry.
It's an honor to be here today to talk about roosters. I've known roosters for about 30 years. Back in November of 1976, I made a talk to the Edwards Test Pilot School troops. The talk was to interest them in coming to fly the good old space shuttle. They got the space tales that we were told about how we would be flying 50 shuttle missions per year at $10.5 million each, and how we needed really good pilots to land at the Kennedy Space Center shuttle runway in 0 visibility. It was forecast to snow back then, and our T-38s don't do so well, so Brewster ferried me back to Ellington in an RF-4C Phantom. Brewster is a real fighter pilot, having gotten 644 hours in combat in Vietnam flying F-100s and F-4s, and he's got more medals than I can even describe. Well, we got to fly together on his first space shuttle mission, STS-9. That was the first Space Lab mission. And the shuttle we hauled up with 6 crew persons in there. Brewster got to work the day shift, working 12-hour days. You know, the space shuttle has 2,000 switches and circuit breakers and event indicators in there and 110 pages of software. Well, Brewster did all that by himself, and actually he had to work 12 to 18-hour days, and did a great job of operating the Columbia while his other 2 crewmates worked on the space lab. We had some close calls. Just before entry, we were powering everything up to do entry, and we'd been up there for 10 days and nothing's gone wrong. And we lost 2 main computers within 5 minutes of each other. And there were 6 crew people with 6 sets of the biggest eyeballs you ever saw. And we got one of those computers, restarted computer number 2, and then we got to land at Edwards 7 hours later. The really close call was that if we had lost the second computer and have it fail again during entry, and we had used the onboard procedures that we had to fix that computer, we would have lost control of the vehicle, of the orbiter. Brewster may not have heard about this potential malfunction. We also had an auxiliary power unit which supplies hydraulic power to catch fire at 40,000 feet. And this fire, as we came on down and landed, it crippled another auxiliary power unit.